If you want to understand America, I don't know what you would read. I don't. I think you'd probably have to see a Quentin Tarantino film, right? Or go to, big time wrestling, right? Go to one. I wonder where all those people come from in those big giant auditoriums. I mean, if you want to inculcate peace, it's a very odd thing by teaching young children, having these two. Wrestling used to be a noble thing. Two people and they wrestled and then they shook hands afterwards. They don't do that anymore. They hit each other over the head with boards and smash their heads up again. It's supposed to be fake, but kids can't determine that. I mean, we had one poor 13-year-old boy jumped on this 5-year-old kid and killed him, shattered his spleen. And he got it from big-time wrestling. That's why they have these big, don't do this at home. And the only reason I know about big-time wrestling, it's very popular in Saudi Arabia. They actually really like big-time wrestling. And they're convinced it's real. I was once I was in a qahwa place and coffee house. And they were watching it. And I said, that's not real. And they said, no, it's real. Look. I gave up, How do you argue with him? Look, he threw him down, he fell down. It's real. But promoting that type of a culture, because I really believe Abu Ghraib is a direct result. I call these guys Quentin Tarantino's children. They're kids that grew up on violence, on pornography, garbage in, garbage out. And I really was hoping for it was a bit of optimism on my part, but I was actually hoping that perhaps our country would just for a brief moment be able to recognize our shadow, just to see an aspect of our culture, of who we are, because we are Abu Ghraib. That is part of us. And to deny that, to say it has nothing to do with the United States of America is to deny our shadow. And Jung believed that the more you denied the shadow, the greater it grew. The greater it grew. Unless you were able, he felt it was like a seesaw, that the beautiful aspect of the human soul had to be in balance with the shadow. And if it wasn't, if you denied it, you elevated it. And what we do in war is we project our shadow onto others. This is what we do. All the despicable qualities that we hate about ourselves, we project them on the other. Do you see? The Arabs, hate women. They're misogynistic. Look at some of the statistics in our own country. Pornography is the #1 media industry in the United States of America. What does that tell us about our culture and how we view women? Because the Arabs that I know, they love women. Really. And I don't say that, you can interpret that as you like, but there's those type of Arabs as well. But every Arab learns from the time they're little children, al-jannatu tahta aqdam al-ummahat. Paradise is at the feet of the mother. That's what the Prophet Muhammad taught his community, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Paradise is at the feet of the mother. I know Arabs that would never greet their mother without kissing her hand and kissing her forehead. Would do anything for their mothers. Really. So we can project all of that darkness onto the other, and it enables us to demonize them, to treat them despicably, to carpet bomb them, to brutalize them, and things that Chris talked about in his talk that he's seen. I mean, I saw some of it in the refugee camps in Peshawar during the Afghani war against the Russians. Just the faces of the people. I mean, that's what happens when you demonize the other. It's just very easy to degrade, cover them in feces, violate them with sticks. I mean, this is what people can do. And what's interesting to me about war and religion, because it's a paradox, religion, of all the religions, Islam is most associated with militancy. It's seen as a militant religion. And there's certainly a militant aspect about Islam. Muslims are people. Solzhenitsyn said when he was in the Gulag in Siberia, and he wrote this. It's a very beautiful passage in one of his books. He said, of all the people in the Gulag, the one people that refused to be subjugated by the Russian guards were the Chechens. They would not submit to the humiliation. They always stood up and they would fight. And he said, and the unusual thing about this is that they actually gained the respect of the Russian guards. And the Russian guards had a type of fear of them. Chechens, the name for their capital, Grozny, is fierce. Tolstoy wrote a book about a Chechnyan mujahid called Haji Murad, about the nobility of the Chechnyan warrior. Chechens are a very free and independent people. And one of the things that Islam teaches is never to be a slave of anybody but God. Never bow down to anybody. Honor people, respect people, but never allow a person to abuse you. That's at the essence of the Islamic teaching, because you have been ennobled by God, according to the Quran. All of the children of Adam and Eve have been ennobled by God. We have a human dignity that is essential to our nature, our character. And in honoring that dignity, we must honor others. And in honoring that dignity, we do not allow ourselves to be dishonored. And the Prophet Muhammad said, a believer does not humiliate him or herself. So that's something very essential. And that's why the Palestinians are a resistant people. It's difficult for them. And even if they lash out in heinous ways, if you don't understand what is the essence of that, then you're missing the point. You're missing the point. Because while I condemn the use of indiscriminate violence, I'm completely opposed to it, and I believe that blowing up buses in Tel Aviv is indiscriminate violence. I don't agree with it. I've always been against it. I've read arguments for it by certain scholars from the Middle East. I've never been convinced by them. But it happens. And the question that I think we're confronted with, Dostoevsky said it's very easy to hate those who do evil, but it's very difficult to understand them. And this is one of the great things about the poets and why we need the poets. Auden, September 1939, he was sitting in a dive in New York City when he heard about the invasion of Poland. And he said that scholarship could explain what was unleashed. He said, ask what happened at Linz. What unleashed that imago? A psychopathic God. I and the public know what all school children learn: those to whom evil is done do evil in return. And that's a lesson that we need to learn. We need to learn that what we are seeing is a projection of ourselves. It's a projection of ourselves. And they, me, we all need to see this on all sides. Because as long as we pseudo-speciate, as long as we deem the other as less than human, the kafir, right, the disbeliever, the infidel, justifying with that abuse of that other, then we've failed to learn the essential truths of our tradition, whatever it might be. Because at the root of war is injustice, it's greed, it's selfishness, and it's a total lack of concern for the suffering of others. And all of those things, religions came to free us from. And that's absolute truth. Whether it's Hinduism, whether it's Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, they came to expose to us the worst qualities, our shadow, so that we might know ourselves better. And until we have greater self-knowledge, and this is what we're confronted with, an absolute imperative to have self-knowledge, because that's what this is about. It's about learning about ourselves through the lens of the other. Imam Shafi'i, one of the great scholars of Islam, was once asked, how did you get such excellent character? He said, I always listened to what my enemies said about me, and I took it seriously. Our enemies have something to teach us. In Latin, the word enemy comes from inimicus, not friend. Not friend. Somebody who's not a friend. Which, in the pre-modern world, that's the way it was viewed. The tribe and everybody else. There's a tribe in the Amazon called the Wari tribe, W-A-R-I. And their word, according to a linguist, Stephen Pinter, their word for dinner or for food is not a wari. Which he said was problematic if you were ever invited to have dinner with them. Being unwary. But that is the pre-modern world, the tribe. Do you see the tribe? It's me versus them. The Arabs have a proverb, me and my brother against my cousin, me, my brother, and my cousin against my neighbor, and me, my brother, my cousin, and my neighbor against everyone else. I mean, that's one view of the world. That's a view that our religions came to remove. Tribalism, provincialism, partisanship. Nationalism is a disease. It's a disease. And I don't believe patriotism is a disease. Love of your country is not a negative thing, it's a good thing.